Welcome back to Why Blank Lost. I'm David Bloomberg, and unlike the past couple weeks, I was very, very happy about who was evicted this week. Nothing against Zach, but as a bit of a spoiler for the rest of the podcast, boy, did he deserve it. Zach, today, to discuss it all after his wedding and honeymoon is my co-host, Ovi Kabir.
David, so happy to be back. I knew this was the episode I had to return on because, well, there's a lot to talk about. And I already knew if there's somebody going to bring the fire, it was going to be David. Because while I was catching up on all of it, I was like, wow, you know what? These are a lot of dumb moves being made. And these are a lot of moves that David is going to want to talk about. So I'm happy to discuss it with you.
Yes, welcome back. I hope you and Hannah had a great time in both your wedding and honeymoon. I mentioned last week that we all saw the article and the photos about your wedding in People magazine. And for anyone who didn't see it, of course, we have it again here.
Wow.
I don't think I've ever had a co-host who was in People magazine before for a whole spread.
Well, thank you, David. We were just taking a book out of the house. We were just trying to make it a jury. That was our primary goal. And, we made it there. So we're very happy.
Yes,
we look the two of you, good, don't we?
The two of you looked amazing. We also heard from Cliff last week that it was a lot of fun. So that was, that was good. Now, on top of that, this was a huge couple of weeks for you because you two were also on the Food Network.
This is I'm not the news. I am not the news here. This is, yes, we were. And fortunately, it was probably just as messy in some ways as the Big Brother house, but it only lasted, a lot shorter time, which is hard to do.
Yes, and in case people missed it, first of all, why don't you tell them what it was, what to look for?
Yeah, no, I mean, we did, we competed on Family Recipe Showdown. It was on Food Network. We got to serve Judge Duke Chase and Octavia Spencer, which was really cool. That was like mind blowing. I always watched her movies, and getting to serve her our food was incredible. If you want to watch it, it's on HBO Max. You can catch it. It's episode 6, I believe. It's Cast Iron Secrets. So watch Hannah, my new wife, my only wife, not new wife, I guess.
She's both.
That's true. She holds both titles right now.
All right. Well, definitely, I think we can say that over the past couple of weeks, Ovi, you won in life. So,
thank you, David. Thank you.
Yes. But the rest of this podcast will be about Zach, who definitely did not win. Now, I know some people may see the title of this, and hopefully they've made it this far in because they may say, well, it's obvious why Zach lost. He didn't use his special veto power to get off the block. But there really is so much more than that. Like, how did he end up there to begin with? Why was he the target after Keanu saved himself? And there are even questions about why he didn't use that $10,000 special veto power, with some even going so far as to say he was right to keep the money. Spoiler, they're wrong. But we are here to get to the bottom of it. As we do every week, we will look at how Zach played in comparison to a set of guiding rules I originally wrote back in 2004 and have modified ever since. We'll analyze his actions using what we saw on TV, live feeds, interviews, and other information. And you can look at the most recent published version at robhasawebsite.com/bigbrotherrules. Now, we usually have some other things to discuss about the week in general, and that's, of course, the case this week. I actually want to start with a few Zach-related items that aren't about the rules per se. First, Zach is clearly not a super fan, maybe not even a fan. As you know, he showed it at the start of the season when Rachel was talking about having met Brendan, and he was like, "Oh, you met your guy here?" He had no clue who they were. And I know some people are like, "Well, a lot of these are younger and they didn't see." If you are a fan of Big Brother, you should know who Rachel and Brendan are. Or, a big fan, a super fan, especially. So therefore, it was also not surprising he didn't know about Marcellus Reynolds from Big Brother 3. On top of that, he was shocked to find out that things happen between episodes. And he announced it to us all when he was evicted. Like, he was like, Julie, fans don't realize this. No, yeah, Zach, we're not as clueless as you are. We understand this. Okay.
Oh, it's
We
starting strong.
things called live feeds. We see it.
We see. I would say we're starting strong here. No, you're exactly right, David. I mean, it's one of those things where I think it's very fun to have a mixture of fans and people who don't really know as much of the game in there. And so I don't expect a lot of players to walk in there and know the history of every single player, obviously. But I do think there's certain key points. It's truly like you got if you, and when you're on the show, right, you have some time beforehand to study up while
Yes.
you're in the process, and also when you there's a definite period, but 2 weeks when you're like, oh, well, I'm kind of in this. I'm either on the chopping block to be an alternate, or I'm in this essentially. You got to study up then, and that's the frustrating. And we'll talk about it. It's a common theme with Zach. That I actually enjoyed Zach a lot in different ways, but it's so frustrating when you see somebody who has the tools naturally to play the game really well, but doesn't know the game to use those tools.
Right. Right. It's like, giving someone a drill and watching them hammer a nail with it.
Hmm.
It's like, no,
Exactly.
that's not how you use it. Uh, but yeah, I of course would prefer that the game went more the way of Survivor and had
Hmm.
lots and lots of fans in it. I know not everyone agrees because not everyone watches for the same reasons, but this season went way the other way, to like the extreme of having way too many people who were just way too clueless. And so if they're looking for a mix, they didn't even get a mix this time.
No, they probably did. I think the bar for super fan has dropped very much. So I think when
Yes.
people are saying they're super fans, it's people who watched a few seasons. Is the way the show talks about versus the people
Right.
who are really watching this podcast who are in this thing are the super fans who know what's going on there.
Right.
So we
Exactly.
want some of y'all on the show. So apply.
Yes. Now, another thing, because he isn't a super fan or even a fan, he clearly didn't know about the first in curse, because I remember him rushing right through the door when Julie called his name. And I was like, oh. But this has also made me realize something. The first in curse is going to continue forever, because it's not so much a curse as it now is an indicator of whether you know what you're doing.
The
Anyone who
barometer.
knows Big Brother is going to avoid going in first. We've seen it happen where an actual fan gets to the door first, but then holds it open as if they're being polite so other people can go in first. But it's the clueless ones like Zach who are just going to merrily stroll right in. And so then, knowing so little about the game inevitably comes back to bite them. It's like a self fulfilling curse at this point.
That's actually a very good point. It's the Big Brother barometer. That's
Yeah.
it's what will tell you whether you're not. And it's a yeah. It's very true. Actually, I wonder when it became a curse to when it became that essentially. Where was the switch point where people were like, actually, we shouldn't walk? Like, which season would that have been?
Yeah.
That'd be
Yeah.
interesting to find out.
Yeah. Now, moving on from Zach, I have to ask you, are you amazed that my pregame winner pick, Keanu, is still here? Or did you think you would miss the opportunity to talk about him going home?
I was so sure that within the 2 week span I was gone essentially. One of us would lose our winner pick because you picked Keanu, I picked Ashley, and from week one, you and I were like, all right, well, we'll try again next season. I am utterly surprised at this point of how they're both in there, and Keanu especially. I mean, but now I'm also on the other side where I am rooting for him in so many ways, and I want to see this man go for. Here's the thing is this man is going to be booked and busy no matter what after the show. He will be on a lot of different things.
Yes.
And watching him, the way he just operates on the show, I really enjoy it. Feels kind of old school where he doesn't really care about things in a way and just keeps overdoing it. In a way, he does his competitions. Of course, it helps that he's a beast. He reminds me of anyone's a football fan, Ashton Genty. He's a running back who basically would stand like this and just plow through everything, slow, fast, and make it. And that's how he is when he does these competitions right here. I'm watching it. I'm like, wow, how does he do it? Very entertaining. Good winner pick. Even if he doesn't win, he's a winner in my heart, David.
Yeah, I mean, he hasn't just won you over, he's won a lot of people over, including even me. I mean, yes, he is still delusional when it comes to the game, but he has this like fun goofiness about him. It's not
Uh-huh.
the same type of delusions that we see in a few of the others where they pair those delusions with negative behavior. And we'll talk about, one or two of them in a moment here. He really does seem to be trying to learn from Rachel, even though he keeps making the same mistakes. But he's trying.
And one thing I will say, watching him on the show and off it, like, on the feeds there, he reminds you of a family member who will just like mess up and annoy you in certain ways, but then he's like, "Hey, I'm really sorry. Didn't mean to do that. Like, I want to like keep going on." And you're like, "Okay, he's very endearing." So I as a person too, it's fun to watch a player that you can like as a person, but also see him compete hard and want to be there. And that's kind of the people we want on the show. I imagine who they might not always be super fans or know the game in and out, but they want to learn it and play it as it goes. And that's what also changes strategies, changes the meta, where you have new enigmas go into the game, play their own style. And like, oh, sometimes it works, and sometimes often it doesn't work, but it's fun to watch.
It's funny that you call him a family member. He's kind of like Urkel. He's the next door neighbor who comes over on the sitcom and messes things up, but then he's like, he's so lovable, and we'll keep him around. So
He's a very strong oracle, and he's giving me. I know maybe this is way too soon to say, but it's flashes of when we watched Tony play Survivor in the beginning portion, where you see this person be kind of all over the place, do these crazy moves, and you're like, "What's going on? There's no way." And as it goes on, it develops. He's such a great character, but also he's playing the game. That's kind of what I'm getting with some vibes of Keanu. I need to let him keep going on, but hey, you know what? I am very thoroughly impressed with your winner pick. And my winner pick has turned things around in a way. Ashley is come from the bottoms and risen up in some forms. So maybe less entertaining to watch than Keanu.
yes, yeah. But she is more entertaining to watch than the other person, the next person I'll talk about, Morgan, because the way she acted this whole week was ridiculous. Everything was about her. She complained she would have to choose between her two tightest allies. In fact, sometimes she complained to them, the people who were actually in danger. One time, she complained to Zach when, after he came in from that all night bank robbery punishment, he was in the shower just trying to wash off all the goop. He was tired. He wanted to rest. But her complaining was more important. And then, even as it was getting clear that he was probably leaving unless he won the blockbuster here, she was talking to him, and her focus was always on how hard it was for her. Poor Morgan.
Yeah, I don't know. We might need another name for somebody who has HOH-itis that isn't HOA ever, because this is kind of the vibe I get from Morgan in a lot of ways. And I think there's an
I wouldn't call it
issue.
HOH-itis because it's not like she feels like she's in control. We'll talk about someone who does in a minute, but I it's I don't know, main character syndrome where everything is about her, even the people going home are about her.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that's you feel like it revolves around you, and there's a level of entitlement there
Yeah.
in the game within the game. And yeah, I think it's frustrating to watch there, and then also it's it, it doesn't do well long run in the game because this is early on. Big Brother's a marathon, so if you're doing this and people are going to start seeing that. I mean, as viewers easily see it because we have all angles. But I
Right.
think players start to get that vibe as it goes on because it's again your management of all the players. People think it starts at jury, but it doesn't. It starts pre-jury too because people have to see how you treat other people throughout the whole game.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and then speaking of other, the way she was dealing with other players, she got in trouble with Rachel for continuing to talk about people going to jury, including, telling Rachel to her face Me and my friends, we want you at jury. And so Rachel finally had enough of it and put her in her place. Ever since then, Morgan has been whining about it with great exaggeration to anyone and everyone. If if you watch the live feeds with any regularity, you can recite her script word for word. And then she said friends with an S. And then oh, just be quiet, Morgan.
Yeah, no, it was one of those things, and I think that's the fun thing of seeing Rachel on the show is you're having a player who says things that you as a viewer you're watching like I want to say, like you're like okay, like that's crazy. How are you going to say that to somebody? Because it's the implicit like intent, like implications of what she's saying. Like, oh, we want
Yeah.
you to make a jury. We don't want you to win. And it's like you have control over my game. And for somebody like Rachel, too, it's like you're telling that, to a Hall of Fame player. I think people
Yeah.
sometimes laugh who are who know the show when we talk about Rachel or players like that, where we're like, yeah, I mean, they've won it. It's not easy. She's been a part of this, and she knows this whole world of unscripted television and how she does that. And so there are so many levels to it, and you can see somebody like Rachel who can play a game really well, but also be entertaining and a bit able to have those conversations and things like you want to see on there. These players who aren't fans of the show or knowledge of it won't understand that and feel some sort of way as it comes across.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I mean, I think Rachel is throwing shots at every single person. I mean, Keanu has not taken anything really that's part of the game, especially when you play with somebody like Rachel.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, as someone who has massive HOHitis still, we have Mickey. She has turned into the Mictator. It appears that that special power that she used to take Riley's HOH, it came with a secret additional power that nobody knew about because she became HOH for life.
It's a very strong power. It's maybe $10,000 worthy. I mean, it is. She has stayed in this mindset of winning this game already. That she thinks she's a winner and she's claimed that. And I think it's frustrating because she talks. Here's my issue: is that she doesn't keep any inside thoughts inside. And when there's certain, when she's talking about to the people, I think it was Ashley, where she's talking about what should she do this week? What would be best for her game? Things like that.
Yeah.
Of course, everyone's thinking that. What's best?
Right.
But then
You should
Ashley's
be.
like,
well, unless you're Zach, but you should be thinking that.
yeah, you should be. That would be good. That goes with our rules. Put yourself forward. But you don't say that in front of people as you're scheduling it out. You're like, yeah, this would be the best for my actually. Well, for our teammates. And then you don't stop there. You're like, well, for my game too. I mean, what would be good for everyone's game essentially?
Right.
It's one of those things where it's like really interesting to see because you can see she has a good read on things. But then I think when she gets power, feels like she's in power, which she feels like always in power.
Yeah.
She just allows herself to feel like it's entitled to the game, and that's what we're seeing a lot this
Well,
season.
yeah, she literally used that word at one point. She confronted Keanu, and this was on live feeds, not on the show. She confronted him and said she wanted to know whenever anyone was plotting against her. And I loved his response, which was, well, duh. Because, yeah, of course, everyone in Big Brother would love to know that. And then she said a few other sentences and later said she was entitled to know. And it's like, yeah, you've been acting entitled, all right. Because it's not just what we saw on the show with her only thinking of herself, just the way she talks to people in general. She brought Morgan to tears by reaming her for daring not to tell her every single thing she heard or discussed with other people. Both of these conversations, the Morgan and the Keanu, were taking place alongside one-on-one meetings she's been holding as if she's the HOH. She has been trying to control who cooks and when. I mean, like I said, there's a reason that a lot of live feed viewers are calling her the Mictator.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I wonder too is that are we seeing players? Because Mickey is definitely an egregious example of it because she really showcases that level of entitlement of feeling that she's won the game or should control the game. But I see it kind of seep into some other players, and I wonder if it's because of we have so many opportunities early on in the game now to get yourself off the block, or just three nominees. Then you have your veto, and no one's really getting backboard right now because of the three nominees.
Right.
You have that, and then you have the competition right before the eviction. So I almost wonder if people feel so safe because of that, and they feel the ability to be able to have these type of, it may be in a traditional season, people Mickey might be a little bit more careful. I don't know. What is your
I mean,
thoughts on that?
not to argue with you, but I don't think that it's that deep.
No.
I don't think
Yeah.
she's thinking about it at all. I think that she's just like I said, she got that taste of power and she
Hmm.
became HOH for life in her mind. She never gave up the power. So,
You might be right.
yeah,
Trying to give her the benefit of the doubt, but
I
you might be
know.
right here.
I know. You usually do. I do want to ask you before we move on. Do you have anything
Mhm.
or anyone else you want to discuss? I know, we had started to talk before we were recording about the season in general, since you've been gone for a couple of weeks.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's been a fun season for me. I think, with all the we talk about coalitions a lot in Big Brother House, where there's typically two sides, and then for these past few seasons, there's been a few small moving blocks that
Mhm.
turn into bigger alliances. This is a fun season where I think there is so much intersectionality, where different players are working with other players, small blocks, and allies who should be allies are taking out their allies because they think, okay, down the line, I want to work with these people. It's very interesting. I've really thoroughly enjoyed it. I think that it feels like recently we're in like a renaissance era of unscripted television, reality TV, where there's a lot of shows coming out, and I felt like for a long time Big Brother has been lagging behind the game because it's just like seasons sometimes tend to not feel like we're like, oh, this is a great pre-jury, this is a great jury, but the whole game itself, we're like disappointed. Of course, the game has a lot more to go, but so far, if the season can continue like this and be dynamic, and we have these characters, these players here, I'm going to be very happy because I've really loved watching these players play.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. It definitely has been dynamic.
Yeah.
Uh, and the thing is, people watch Big Brother for a number of different reasons. As a person who mostly watches for the strategy, this show has been incredibly frustrating. I mean, I've been
I
posting
understand that.
videos, and it's funny because I posted a video. I think it's about this blockbuster here where Keanu won, and I was smiling and laughing because Keanu won and Zach was evicted. And one guy said on TikTok, "I've seen your videos come up before, but I always skip them because you look so serious. And this one you were smiling, so I watched it. And I told him, I said, "Well, I do have resting serious face, so that's part of it. But yes, a lot of the times it's true. I'm like talking about the things people did wrong because there are so many of them
Hmm.
this season."
Good
Um,
for business.
yeah, right. Uh, I obviously there's the Riley problem. We have talked about that.
Hmm.
I've talked about that extensively already. Certainly, if we could get rid of him, that would make things much, much better. But the people in the house aren't seeing it, so I just don't think it's going to happen soon. Um, yeah, there is entertainment. There's these weird, like you said, overlapping alliances where it's hard for people to make moves. Someone said this on Blue Sky, and I'm sorry I don't have the attribution to give credit, but where they said the problem is one person is an ally of the other person, but that person is an ally with the first
Hmm.
person's, hated enemy. And so it's hard for them all to work together.
Yes.
You have like Ava doing this dance in between.
Hmm.
She's an ally of Mickey, she's an ally of Rachel. So um yeah, that makes it interesting. Even they have been talking about sides. There are sides, but there's a lot of people who have one foot on each side.
No, very much so. And I think it's one of those things where I think certain seasons are definitely strategic. We're watching it, but then you see such a divide between certain players where some
Mhm.
players know the game and play it really well, and other players don't. I feel like we're very on like a level playing field across the board where most of these players have similar, if not a standard deviation of a little bit above or below information on how to play the game. And then you have Rachel.
Yeah.
And with Rachel being kind of handcuffed because she is a veteran and the only one coming in here. So it's one of those things where it's working out well. It's because I was worried when we knew she was coming back because I was like, okay, will they make this like an easy walk in the park for her, or will she just go out immediately? Because then we don't get. at this point, I feel like I've got to watch Rachel be Rachel Riley for what we love, and I'm satisfied. I'd love to see her keep going farther. I'd love to see her at the end. That would be
Yeah.
great. I love Rachel, but at this point, I'm at least happy that I've gotten what I want from her impact, at least on the show, and I also feel like it hasn't diminished the season having a veteran come in there. So
Right.
I get what you say. It is a lot of mistakes, but again, I think it's good for the business because we have a lot of reasons why people lost this season. All right,
That,
we're like, hey, boom, 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 boom.
that
So
is definitely true. All right. Well, moving on to our next segment, I have a big change this week for it because this week it's Julie Chen Moonves is right about blank. Now, this is something that not happens often. It may be the first time. But many of us were hoping Julie would go back to her early days when she had more spark and personality. And, if Zach was indeed evicted, she'd give him a good whack with the cue cards. I posted a video about how Zach needed a history lesson about Marcellus and voiced my hope that she would do it. And I know I wasn't the only one asking for this. Then, when he got voted out at first, she hugged him and they went down to their seats. And I was so mad. I was like, oh, she didn't whack him. I even posted and said, darn it. And then she asked him to lean forward, and I knew what was coming. He didn't, of course, because, as I mentioned, he's clueless about any Big Brother history. But she got him. So good job, Julie. You got it right.
she did get that run right. She was there, and you know what? I think she was all of us in that moment where we're
Yes.
like, ugh, and we will discuss that in a lot. But yeah, it was and I think that speaks to maybe how bad a decision it was when you have all the people basically call it out. When you have the host of the show
When you have
who
Julie, who doesn't
tradition
really know what's going on. I mean, last week, I know you weren't here, but last week I had 3 parts to the Julie Chen Moonves is wrong about blank
parts.
segment. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I mean that's which is not that's a good that's a standard deviation of how many will probably be a
Yeah.
week for our segment. But yeah, no, I mean she even saw it. She called it out. She was all of us at that moment.
Yeah. All right. Well, with that, we can move on to Zach because Zach told Dalton Ross that he thinks he was evicted because people saw him as a threat and Rachel was pushing hard for him to stay while most of the house was against her. So they did the opposite of what she wanted. Plus, he said people perceived him and Lauren as a duo. He actually managed to get a few points of partial credit there, but it's nowhere near a full accounting of what went wrong with his game. Not to mention the special veto power elephant in the room that he neglected to mention. So let's dive in and figure it all out because at RHAP, we know Big Brother and we know why Zach lost. The first and most important rule is to scheme and plot. Despite his lack of overall knowledge of the game, Zach did seem to, at least in theory, know this much. He was a part of a number of alliances, most of which never actually went anywhere, like the Heavy Hitters 2, the core of the Heavy Hitters, the Bond Alliance, the Melting Pot, and so on. The one that really stuck was with Vince and Morgan, which, of course, we already talked about from Morgan's perspective earlier, and we'll talk about more from Zach's perspective in Rule 2. But one issue with Zach thinking that this alliance was his true core was that Vince was in a lot of alliances. And almost every person in those alliances thought Vince was part of their true core. So as much as some people started picking up on Vince being in these multiple alliances, he was still in a better position than Zach when they shared alliances because Vince put in the work and he out-schemed Zach.
Very much so. And this is kind of why, for me, I'm probably a bit more on the warmer side to Zach than you will be today. Because I test he did break a lot of rules, but he has such a natural gift to the game that I'm so frustrated. Like we said earlier,
Well,
he
see,
had the
that's it.
tool.
It makes it worse in some ways.
Yes, mhm.
You know.
Exactly. He had this affinity to understand he needs to play the middle in a certain way, and he understood that where he wanted to make these moves or lack of moves because of an intentionality behind it. He had reasons for it through the game, and where you see him align with people or work on one end or decide not to go for this vote or not. He had a reason because he didn't want to be such a big target on there. He was charismatic. The issue I found, like with his strategy, like you say, you have Vince there. He was everybody's third person. He wasn't their first. He was their third or fourth person. And then we'll get to, but the ability within that strategy, you have to really look out for yourself. You need to be able to be cutthroat in there. And when it came to people he liked, he was unable to do that. So it becomes such a lukewarm game there because you have all the strategy in the world in front of you, but unless you enact it, it just doesn't help you.
Yeah. Now, one thing is, we just talked about Vince out-scheming Zach, but that wasn't difficult because Zach out-schemed himself. Much of what he did was poor strategy or decisions rather than over-strategizing. So that's why we'll talk about it here in the first rule. But of course, the prime bit of poor strategy, which people are probably surprised I didn't lead with, was to not use his special veto power. As he told Dalton Ross, Julie whacked him because, quote, in her mind, I made a very, very stupid move. Yes, Zach, you did. And that's why I'm wearing this shirt that I've been saving for a special occasion. As Forrest Gump says, stupid is as stupid does. And, we discussed already, it's not often that we agree with Julie. But in this case, she was absolutely right. It was indeed a very, very stupid game move. And by the way, some people may be saying, wow, that's awful harsh and things. Zach gave up his right to worry about what other people say when he was calling Ashley dumb and calling her game moves dumb in his interviews. He kind of opened the floodgates on himself there. But anyway, Zach continued to Dalton. I still stand by my move because it was in the moment the best situation for me. I was really rolling the dice, and if it really paid off for me, I thought, in my opinion, I was really sitting pretty. I was thinking of the long game when I really should have been focused on one day at a time. Wow, he said really a lot in that one quote there. I didn't notice it until I was reading it. So he admits he was thinking about it wrong. He said, I should have been focusing on one day at a time. But the beginning of the statement was, I still stand by it. Now, one of my pet peeves is when people say I wouldn't have changed it or I stand by it. That was obviously poor thinking. He made it worse by saying I stand by it and admitting it was poor thinking.
Yeah, it's here's the frustration because here's the thing. I get like players they leave, they have to cope, right initially. Afterwards, you have to figure out reasons. If it was he wanted the money, then go out and say that. I still think that's a dumb decision because long run, and not even jury.
Oh, I have a whole monologue about that coming up.
You're gonna make the money elsewhere. Truly, you will. Once post show, you will be able to. The longer you are, the better you'll be for that. That aside, though, I think why I'm frustrated when you're thinking of the long game, he talks about thinking of other people, and we see that as a common trend for him for Lauren. That's why he didn't want to make her go to a split vote weeks ago, and then for this one, he didn't want Morgan to be put up. Mm-hmm. That's the frustrating part is that you can't think of your long game and everyone else's long game. And this is such a overpowered power. And that was why I was really happy about how Zach was playing. There were certain decisions, like I still kind of questioned the Jimmy vote, where he didn't want to go have that split, or the Adrian vote. And there's so many other portions of it. But I was like, you know what? He's playing the middle and he has a get out of free jail card. And this is a special veto where it's so overpowered. Don't think about the money. It's just a veto. But it gives you graces. It even becomes his friend afterwards. Because you can talk to her about being like, hey, I'm going to give you $10,000. I need to save myself. All right, if I'm HOH, I'm like, you know what? You're not just saving yourself with a power. You're giving me $10,000. That's the ability to make an ally right here. Puts you in such a strong position. And we talk about Zach being everyone's third or fourth player. This is a power that gets him in the good graces of other people and saves himself. It allows him to finally then move up there. And then, like we said, there's so many intersectionality here. If Vince is gone, Zach is in all those circles now. And he's people's not just second or he's their person.
Yeah, but the problem was he didn't see it that way. He didn't think about it
Mm-hmm.
that way. I mean, he, like you mentioned, he claims he didn't use the veto to protect Morgan. Uh, and he told Mike Bloom, Vince and Morgan are my 1 and 2 in the house. So it would have been a situation where if I pull myself off, my 2 allies that I'm riding to the end with would have been in immediate danger. And so it's like, why would I risk that? Why would you risk that? Why would you risk that? Because you can't ride to the end with them if you aren't there anymore. And then he continued, let's roll the dice. If either I or Vince make it through past this week, we can still capitalize on the power in later weeks. Yeah, but that's a big if. And look where rolling those dice got you. You crapped out.
And then because I think he mentioned in an interview that if he did win the veto, he played on Vince and used his special power there.
Right.
Here's the thing: is you have, and that's what I don't know if I love the move, but I think
that's not terrible.
Not terrible. The thing is though, you can utilize even when you have this power, right? You can use it as a negotiating tool. Tell other people, post wise, and figure out how you want to do. I think you'll probably mention it later too, so I don't want to take it up. But I think somebody mentioned how he can still utilize his knowledge of his power to get farther in the game, even on nomination night, where eviction night, where he could have said, "Hey, the next HOH, I'll give you blah blah." There's ways to utilize the power even without utilizing the power. And I think that's what I'm so frustrated with is he was thinking so inside the box with this when he didn't even want to use it on himself.
I don't think that he knows the box. I mean, he only knows the box. He was so concentrated, and I'm skipping a little bit to rule 3 here, but he was so concentrated on this one way of thinking that you're right. He didn't go outside of that. And then he added to Mike Bloom, the reason why I didn't use it at the very end is because the perception of that I was going to stay in the house was very solid at that point when the veto meeting actually happened. Except, how he talked about that, there's all these things that happen that, aren't on the show. Yeah, the live feeds, we watch them. We saw them. That's not the case. We saw he had plenty of information to make it clear he was in possible danger at that moment. Now, maybe he ignored it because he didn't want to believe it, but it was there for him. The funny thing is, he once again acted, like we had never heard of them by saying that's what's crazy about the Big Brother house. America doesn't realize how much time you have in between each thing that happens on TV. And it's like, Zach, we do realize it because we actually watch and understand it. And again, as part of that, we saw that he had the info he needed.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the things where I think he's going to be for a while. I like to think that he deep down knows the decision he made is not the right decision. I think maybe in time he will own up to it and talk about it. It's tough. It's a tough one,
I don't know. I think he seems to be the type that's going to double down and stay this way for life. But we'll see. We'll see what happens.
We'll see.
We'll put a side bet on it.
Yeah, we should. For his sake, I hope he finds some sort of, because this is one of the ones that truly eat you up. It's like going, on Survivor, going home with immunity. Like this is the closest thing you can go home with immunity in your pocket.
Yep.
And when you're in a good position, and then it's not even with Survivor where you're kind of blindsided with. In Big Brother, you can kind of get blindsided a little, but you have so many options to know how much of a danger you are, especially before the veto competition. So it's one of those ones where it's like, man, you have this train coming at you. You are tied to the train tracks, and you're still like, I'm fine. I have this power to get somebody to take off the ropes, but I'll be fine, And so frustrating because he was in such a good position. And the reason why I think you and I are both frustrated about it is because we know he would know better. Like he had the ability to understand the game. Like we talk about Keanu.
We thought he did. Clearly, we were wrong.
He didn't. But someone like Keanu, who his natural talents, maybe not as Zach's, in which he was able to maneuver the game. But I like to think Keanu, for all some of his shortcomings in the game, would have been like, hold up, I have a power, which he did too. Let's use it.
I don't know. I think Keanu definitely would have said, I'm going to win the blockbuster, so I'm not going to bother using my power. But
At least he would have a track record.
Yeah, the difference was he did win the blockbuster. So now you already mentioned this, but while Zach himself didn't bring it up specifically, some of the, shall we say, more casual fans have tried defending Zach by saying he was right to hold on to the guaranteed $10,000 rather than risking it. I saw that literally so many times in my comments on TikTok and YouTube. I literally just started copying and pasting replies because clearly people don't bother reading other comments when they make their comments. And so I just started copying and pasting, go look at the previous comments, go look at the previous comments. So, but I'm not going to do that here. I'm not going to tell listeners, well, go look at my TikTok comments. And I want to explain it a little more broadly here. Taryn has repeatedly explained part of it, noting that because of the stipend players get, if Zach had made it to jury, he would have gotten almost that full $10,000 just from that. So it's almost a break even, no matter what. But it goes so much further than that. He had a chance to win $750,000. If we go by pure random chance, 1 out of 12, he had an expected value of $62,500. Now, of course, I would say he had a better than 1 in 12 shot because, one, there are a couple people who I think basically cannot win. And two, like you said, he did have some natural ability. And, maybe if he had survived this, it would have continued to grow. From a website on gambling, quote, the expected value is the measure of what a bettor can expect to win or lose per bet placed on the same odds time and time again. So basically, Zach would have been betting $10,000 that he could win $750,000. While, of course, Zach is only playing Big Brother one time, he's not doing the same thing over and over again. Statistically speaking, it's still the same decision. And on top of that, the simple math that I just did didn't include other things. Like he could have won the second place prize of $75,000. I didn't factor that in. He could have won other prizes like the London trip he gave away. He could have gotten the thing that you mentioned, other financial deals after the game, because staying longer makes you more bankable. And especially someone like him, he was like, oh, well, at some point early in the season, he said, well, the Savannah Bananas had reached out to me. Well, you know what? The Savannah Bananas might be interested in the guy who came in, I don't know, call it fourth place on Big Brother and showed some personality if he had started showing more. They're not going to be as interested as the guy who came in 13th place, who went out in a really dumb way. So I didn't even think about all of that. I went the most conservative route and it was still obvious. And yet there were still people telling me, no, they would have kept the $10,000 because there's risk involved. And like I told one of them, okay, do you keep your retirement funds in cash in a mattress? Because there's risk involved in the stock market too. This is, you put that money in your mattress, you'll make sure that it's there for you. And just generally, these are the people I want to play poker against because I want to get down to final 12 with them in a tournament. And that tournament has a final prize of $750,000. And I want to offer them a chop where they get $10,000. I don't care if you're in last place in chips at that point. You don't take that deal, especially when you're not even risking that much because, again, you can make almost that much by getting to jury. So, and I do think, we'll talk about it a little later, I do think he was very likely to get to jury. Now, I know that was a lot. I knew it was going to be a monologue, but I did feel the need to explain it more than just saying it was poor math. But that's what it comes down to. So it is funny that he mentioned a couple times in interviews rolling the dice, when really what he was doing was refusing to roll the dice and just letting the casino win.
No, well said. I think it's good when you put out the whole math like that to have people understand from all sides of it because you can talk about it. 'Cause the numbers don't lie here. And it's one of those things. Again, it's happened, right? And I feel for him because it's one of those things where I do hope he gets other opportunities post show. I hope he gets some ability. I imagine he will. But I know it was a guarantee that if he stayed longer in the house, there was going to be some more financial opportunities for him. More than that, too, if it's a player who doesn't have as much agency in the game where it's like, hey, it's looking not good for them, I'm like, all right, grab the 10K, do what you need to. Zach wasn't in that place, though.
Right.
Zach was not in a horrible position in the game. He was actually in a very strong position in the game, and he set himself up very well. It was just this level of overconfidence where he got so high that he's like, all right, I don't need to save myself with this incredible superpower I have. Uh, and again, it was one of those ones, again, money is different for every person, right? Subjective. If the number was a different number, maybe I could kind of understand it when we're looking at the 25 and 50K, something, even more so. The
Yeah, something
10K.
closer. Like if it was 50K, okay, that's close enough to 62,500. And that's a serious amount of money. I'm not saying $10,000 isn't. Anyone
No, yeah,
wants
exactly.
to give me, Venmo me $10,000, I'm not going to refuse it.
Yes.
But the point is comparatively to the prize overall. That's what
Yes.
I'm talking about.
Because and like we mentioned, being in jury, you're going to make a set amount of money there. So you're right there at that line there, and then you're able to kind of finagle your way through it. The farther you make, so yeah, I think it's just and more than anything, it just cuts your experience short. And I think that's what we see as the like. I think you ask any super fan who's watching this right now, be like, hey, most likely, like, will you take $10,000 or the chance to be on this show right now? I think most of them would say, I want to be on the show. It's a
Yeah,
life changing experience that most people who are fans of the show want to take. So I think for many people who are fans of the show, it's so frustrating from watch, but wow, you're in a wonderful, incredible, great position right now. And you basically are going to make the same amount of money if you stay a little longer, which you probably will. Why don't you just use the power that you were gifted? It's not like they're taking it away from you. You
right,
never got it. It's house money. That's the
right.
difference too with these AV2. It's a free bet. It's not even bet money that you have to put in. It's the house gave you the money, the casino gave you the money, and they're like, hey, do what you want. Like, okay.
Yeah, I
So
mean, there's definitely, and I don't know the term for it, but there have definitely been psychology studies showing if you ask someone to make a bet, with house money, well, they feel like they've been given that money and it becomes theirs, and therefore they're less likely to. They view it
yeah,
as already having the prize, even though they came in with nothing.
yeah.
So they could use, people could use Zach in their psychological study here.
It would be
Uh,
there's gonna be a lot of studies on this week with him
yeah,
probably down the line,
yeah.
I'm sure.
Now, moving on to some of his other bad strategies, he was making decisions that weren't based on his game. We had hinted about this a little bit earlier. He talked about playing too selflessly. Personally, I would have used a different word that begins with S. um, but he told Julie, I understand that you have to play for yourself eventually. No, Zach, you have to play for yourself always. You're there for you to win, not to help someone else win.
Yeah, no, I think that's my biggest frustration for the game is when people play for other people, but more so for people who are already playing for themselves. There no one else
Mhm.
is playing for him. Morgan is not playing for Morgan didn't even vote for him. Lauren didn't even vote for him. They're not playing for him. Vince is not playing for him. He's throwing him under the bus as Vince should. You know what? There's
Mhm.
going to be a lot of slack. I'll give Vince for this and that. Vince is trying to live. He's trying to survive in this house. He wants to be there. And I appreciate that. Do whatever you need to do that. And Zach didn't have that, dog in him for it, where he's like, hey, I need to be here. I'm going to. And it's one of those things where it's like, when you're on the block, gloves are off. You need to do what you need to do. Of course, you don't want to throw maybe your best friend on the bus, but there's nothing wrong with trying to campaign. Stop playing for other people. I mean, this idea that you don't want to be taken off the block because you don't want somebody who, from my understanding, that's the part I didn't keep up as much, but like you rejected or aren't even in a relationship, you won't want them on the block. It's a weird, like, I don't know. It's this white knight type of behavior where these people, and I think it's also this idea that they can't protect themselves. Everyone is here for a reason. They can play
Yeah.
the game. You're either been manipulated that they can't, but these girls, like Lauren Morgan, they can play, putting her to a tie break, because she's an adult, she's a strong woman, she can do that. You don't need to baby these people, and I think that was my frustration in watching him play the game. I'm like, brother, you have the moves in front of you. Make the decisions for yourself. You can do it. It's for it, everything will be fine. No one feels like you owe them anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's it. It's I it was probably coming from, I really wanted Zach to do well because watching him play, I was like, man, he has this in him. It gave me flares of kind of Cody Califeri, the way he was playing his game initially, and not as good by any means. But I feel like there was social elements where Cody was able to really make everyone feel good about him. He was able. I mean, that's what we saw heard in the house. Everyone was like, Zach is a very nice guy. I like Zach as a person. All these things. He had the game moves for it too, and he just was right there.
Yeah, and so
David does not feel that way. David's like, no.
well,
Wrong comparison.
we'll get to more of that. But like you mentioned, the main way this impacted his game was the idea that he wanted to keep Morgan safe. And it wasn't even the first time, and you mentioned Lauren as well, but there was another time too, because Morgan had to tutor him when he wanted Amy out instead of Adrian because he respected Adrian more. Morgan had to explain to him, you can beat Amy in comps. You shouldn't make the game harder for yourself. It's a game. You can't worry about this, who you respect more.
Yeah, no, I mean, different people are coming at varying levels of understanding how this game should be played, and that's the difference you see, right? Like he's coming in there basically with no knowledge, or also the gumption of wanting to be. I don't know, it's tough because people say they're competitive when they go in Big Brother, but some people I think really lose that competitive where they don't. It's different because you have to now, instead of winning a game, you're having to betray people around.
Right.
And some people take that so strongly where they forget that it is a game. I mean, I really like Ava reminding people in her conversations, it's a game. It's a game. Do what you need to, And I think some of these players just need to be reminded that every day, like it's a game.
Yes. Yeah. Now, on top of everything else, Zach also had some just plain misreads. After he was nominated, people were telling him that Mickey was behind it, but he didn't want to believe it. He pushed back to say it was Rachel. Now, he was eventually shut down, but based on his interviews, I'm not sure he ever really accepted that because he said his intent, if he stayed and then won HOH, was to stick with Mickey, who helped target and vote him out, and backdoor Rachel, who voted to keep him and did everything she could to, help him stay. Plus, she was telling him Mickey was the problem, but he just would not listen to anyone who said it.
Oh, that's a great point, David, because you have a coalition who really wants Vinny out. He had some people, and that's, when you see it, he had people who were outside of his core alliance built in to vote from Will from that move. Great. That's the great move that he did. He gave up the London thing. He was able to see that. Of course, it was probably for a kindness there, but also he deaded Will, the certain player who would be like, I'm not going to betray you after that. You have an ally moving forward. You have Rachel who hates Vinny, all right? Who has allies there. The coalition with Rachel right there to get some people off it towards Vinny. I mean, it's all these things, but his misreads, like you mentioned here, made him unable to realize where he should kind of send the troops against.
Yeah. Now, one final piece of strategy I want to discuss here in this very long first rule discussion is him telling Morgan and Mickey about his special power. Now, once again, I don't think this is over scheming, which is why I'm discussing it at the end here rather than the next rule. But it raises the question of whether it was good or bad scheming, or somewhere in the middle. With the outcome, it obviously didn't help. But did it hurt? I'm not sure. Sentiment was already against him, but it seemed like there could be a chance it could sway in his favor. When he told Morgan and then Mickey, it momentarily moved things in his direction. But then it snapped back against him. He said in interviews that he knew he was probably going by that point, so it was a Hail Mary. And I could see that. It did give Mickey reasons not to want to keep him, like the fact that she was the one who had gotten him nominated, and it meant in the future he could use that power in a way that could be detrimental to her. Like, imagine if you're Mickey and you're on the block against him and he uses that power. Oops, now I'm on the block against someone else. But if he finally had indeed realized by that point he was probably on the way out, I can't fault him too much by giving it one last shot. It was, like I said, it was a Hail Mary. It was the last second. Throw the ball, and who knows? Maybe you're up against the Bears defense last season and it ends up working.
You don't hurt yourself like that.
Yeah.
No, it's no, I that one, and then maybe that's why I'm a little bit more softer and Zach there. I get too many flashbacks of having an unused power and trying to do a Hail Mary. Difference was I was not allowed to use my power. He had the ability to use his. It's one of those things where you want to try to use that information to convince other people. You're thinking outside the box. We're like,
Right.
okay, now I'm not using it. Can I use this to leverage any information? And here's the sad thing is that if these are the people he put a lot of time and effort in, right? If that was fruitful effort into the people, this should have been something that could really lock them in, that kind of swayed over there. But they were never, the idea that it wouldn't sway Morgan after all he did there is just such an off-read. Yeah, so I don't think it hurt him. The only thing is maybe he could try to use it in some other people to try to convince them that ways, but you never know at that point either.
Yeah. All right, we can move into the second rule, which says not to scheme and plot too much and to keep your scheming secret. Now, we just finished talking about how Mickey had pushed to get him nominated, and this rule helps explain why, because a lot of it focused on her, specifically from her perspective. Zach being there was detrimental to her alliances. With him there, Morgan and Vince always had someone tighter with them than she was. And the thing was, it was obvious, which is what leads us back to Zach in this rule. We talk about obvious duos being a problem. Zach had a couple of obvious duos and an obvious trio. One obvious duo was with Lauren. Everyone knew he was swooning over her. Another was with Morgan, who was swooning over him. And of course, the trio was Morgan and Vince. All of this was well known. It was so obvious. Even Kelly saw it and told him to his face that she didn't want to move forward with him because he had what she called a tier system of Lauren, then Morgan, and she wasn't in there, or at least was very near the bottom.
Yeah, and he did very little to dissuade people of that too when they brought that information towards him or he had these discussions. It's not like they made this a huge secret. I mean, that's one of those things where, and it's so frustrating because you look at it too and you're like, they didn't even vote to keep you here, Zach. This was your tier of people. And that's what it's like. You put so much time, you sacrifice so much of your game. At least do it to people who would be loyal to you. Like if you go down this ship sinking and you're like, all right, it is what it is. I have my people with you. But they had life rafts. They're the one who shot the bullets in the boat,
You're saying the floaters grabbed the floaters grabbed a life vest, is what you're saying?
They grabbed the life vest, and he just gave his away. He gave his away.
Yeah. Now the other person who was blunt about the situation was Mickey, telling blunt about it like Kelly was. Sorry, was Mickey telling Morgan that people see them staying up till the wee hours every night talking to each other. Morgan, of course, got upset over this because, oh, we're just friends hanging out. We're not talking game. Sure, Morgan. Okay, right. Now, here's the thing. First of all, you're lying. Second of all, even if that were true, it doesn't matter. The perception of the situation, this is something we've talked about before, is that if you're always hanging out with them and it's clear that you're tight with them, the conclusion is people will naturally assume you're talking strategy, you're talking game. And as we discussed earlier, Morgan was so clearly showing the whole house how loyal she was to Zach and Vince, even complaining about it. How could she claim, oh, we're just friends? This did not help Zach's case. People saw Vince and Zach as being too close. So one had to go. Now, obviously, with Keanu winning Blockbuster by that point, it was literally true that one had to go. But even before then, it led to them being nominees together and to Catherine not using the veto. If only Zach had a veto he could have used.
Special veto that basically makes allies while he does it because he gives somebody $10,000. That would be great.
Yeah.
That'd be phenomenal.
Now, one additional aspect of Mickey in particular being upset about the Morgan, Zach, Vince trio was that Zach caused other problems too. At one point, Mickey told Ashley that Zach was pitting Ashley against Morgan. Now, considering how clear he made it that he didn't like anything about Ashley's game in, both when he was still in the house and in his interviews, Mickey was right. She was trying to keep them together as allies, and he was this wedge forced in there.
Yeah, no, I mean, Mickey laid out a lot of seeds, why she didn't like him or like didn't want to work with him moving forward because she wanted to break into that group from early on, where she's like, I'm not part of this foursome. I need to figure something out. She talks to Morgan about it. What's frustrating is that I would also, if she put the rug over Zach or other people, that'd be like, you know what? It is what it is. She outplayed him. The issue here is that, and more issue we've kind of discussed with Mickey, is that she says her inside thoughts out. She strategizes out loud. And because of this, Zach knew this was happening. Everyone around him knew Mickey was, hey, feeling some sort of way here. And now you have an opportunity. Essentially, there's three people who you're supposed to be working with, but you're on the bottom of the totem pole. Two of them are in danger, essentially. And if one of them are replaced, another one of them are going in danger. Let's get one of them out. It's an easy thought for Mickey to do, or with the training of thought that she's been doing with it. But yeah, I think Zach just thought everyone was playing the same way he was playing, where they would sacrifice their game for his game, when there was no inclination that would happen.
Yeah. And then, on top of all this, Mickey had yet one more reason to want to get Zach out, which was that Rachel was, as I mentioned a little bit ago, lobbying hard for him to stay. This wasn't necessarily anything Zach could control, and usually it's a good thing when people are fighting for you to stay. But we saw it with Adrian and Keanu a couple weeks ago. Sometime an ally can hurt your chances. Mickey wanted Rachel out and knew Vince was anti-Rachel. She apparently didn't know that Zach would have also turned down Rachel, but the information she had was Rachel was fighting hard for him. So, of course, that made her want to do the opposite.
Yeah, no, it's one of those things where when you have somebody rallying for you, it hurts you if you don't accept that rallying force either, too, because he was kind of still working against it. I think there's a world if he starts to talk to Rachel more, work some things out, and try to find her coalition of people, maybe they can band something together and be like, hey, we need to be. He truly needed to understand that Vinny and Morgan and them weren't really with him to the end. They would work with him if they could, if they needed that. But Vinny was always, as he should be, looking out for himself. And Morgan didn't shoot, like, he sacrificed his game for her. He's next to Vinny, who Zach is still getting closer to more. She still voted, Vinny, him out over Vinny. And it's one of those things. It's like, if those are your allies, get some other ones. Get somebody else. Work with Rachel, who wants to get. You need to be part of that. But like, he wasn't there for Big Brother.
Yeah. Now, moving on to a non-Mickey related item, I also wanted to talk more about that Adrian or Will vote a few weeks ago. I know Zach made it sound in interviews like he had a good reason for flipping against his alliance and letting Adrian go, but it really put him in a bad spot. He voted with the majority, but they all found out through Ava what his original plan was, which was to get rid of Will, and that Ava had to convince him. That means people like Ashley were not happy with him at all. Now, a lot of players make a similar mistake in Big Brother. They think, well, it's the final vote that matters. So if I just vote with the majority, that's what counts. But the final vote is not all that's important. It's what led up to that point. By flipping, he made it the worst of both worlds. He lost the trust of those he was supposed to vote with, but he never truly gained the trust of those he did vote with.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where you actually put such a huge target on yourself because you played this middle portion there. If you sided with one side there, forced the tie break, the attention's not on you. It's on Lauren or it's on essentially the other side, both sides.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to be the only person singled out, but both sides felt like he kind of betrayed them in a certain way. And the other thing that's frustrating with it is not telling the people until right beforehand, or right after as well.
After,
To
yeah,
maybe
he didn't even
after,
tell them
excuse me,
before.
it
Yeah.
would blindside his closest allies, where they're like, "Hey, what's this reason?" And yeah, they might say, "Okay, we get it. You did it for Lauren." They don't really, in their head, they're like, "I can't trust you not going for it." And we saw that hurt him. We saw these people who should have been a coalition block for him, where he set up these moves here. I mean, they didn't do it. And again, he sacrificed his game for two people who wouldn't even vote for him this day. Like, I cannot get over that. Like, he
Yeah.
truly sacrificed his game for, he keeps talking about it. For what?
Right. Right. All right. Well, the third rule talks about the need to be flexible. We just talked about him flipping the Adrian vote, but also how it had a downside. Earlier, we kind of creeped into this rule and talking about, maybe some not great flexibility. How do you think he did overall here?
I think he was bad flexibility. I think he was very bad at it. I mean, we talk about all it. No, I like truly.
It's a good thing I wasn't taking a drink yet, because that would have been like a spit take, worthy of a GIF.
I think some people would say, "Oh, wait, actually, he shifted his game. Different votes. He didn't want to." No, he was not. He was unable to break these rules that he put on himself. And we always talk about flexibility. For me, when we judge a player, he has to be pushed in a situation. Or can he be flexible now, and how does he deal with it? Each time he was pushed in these situations, he became inflexible. He didn't want to put other pressure on other people, from Lauren to break that vote within the Adrian vote. He didn't want to use his veto here to essentially ensure his safety, because he didn't want somebody else to go on the block for all these different reasons. There's so many forms of it where he could have then moved to a different alliance slightly. He didn't want to throw Vince under the block because he's like, "I can't do that." He imposed these self rules on him that Big Brother doesn't impose on you. No other player imposes on himself, and he imposed it on himself and was so inflexible that he wouldn't break these arbitrary rules that were set out that he made.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's pretty clear. You're not usually as blunt as I am, so I didn't quite expect that opening. But yeah, it is pretty clear that he wasn't flexible in his thinking. Just going back to what we discussed in the first rule about how he decided not to use his special veto power, he had that tunnel vision on the long game, or as you said, not thinking outside the box. He had these ridiculous plans, but he didn't even seem to consider, or at least not nearly enough, that he had an option to use that power that would allow him to move forward and progress towards a longer game. And the same was true about the way he thought about Rachel. Despite her talking to him and helping him and trying to whip up votes for him, he still had it in his mind that she was the enemy. But really, his true enemy was Mickey, who he wanted to stick with.
His enemies were all his allies. None of them looked out for his benefit. None of them. And it's insane too. I mean, we'll get on this down the line for different players, I imagine. But it is also like Zach was a good ally for all of them, blindly allying. He has a power that could help him. I mean, there's a lot of reasons to keep Zach from his team. So I also think he was dumb in the way he played, but also I think his allies around him might have not thought of the long game too, because Zach is a better player probably to have around than Vinny for their sake, because he will probably put them first because no one else will. He won't put himself first. So, yeah, I mean, his inflexibility is reason truly what we'll talk about, but probably why he lost, I think, the most reason.
All right. Well, the fourth rule says players should not let their emotions control them. And there is an emotional component that we need to focus on or discuss, because one of Zach's diary rooms we saw on the show, and this was a topic I had not yet brought up when it came to using the special veto. He said he wouldn't use it because it would mean giving the money to Ava after she blindsided him, and he was not doing that. And I know a lot of people have latched on to this as the quote unquote real reason he didn't play it. And, have said that the stuff he has said afterwards about Morgan was an after the fact rationalization to make himself look better. So it made him look selfless instead of angry. Look, I'm not a mind reader. I cannot absolutely say that isn't the case. However, my suspicion is that that was an immediate reaction, that he was blindsided and boom, was called into the diary room while he was still angry, because they love to do that. And he recorded it. And at that moment, he was like, yeah, I'm not giving her $10,000. But then he had time to calm down and think about it. Now, he didn't think correctly, of course. We spent a good part of the last hour or so talking about that. But I I do think the Morgan reason he's been giving is the real reason. Like I said, I know we can't read his mind. We'll never know for sure. This is not something like the money issue where I will absolutely, put my foot down and say this is right, the other is wrong. I don't know. I will say, if being angry at Ava played any role in his decision, it was stupid, because he should only be considering his own game, not anyone else's.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think you're completely right in that. I will say, I would appreciate that answer more if that was his consistent answer. If he was like, screw Ava, I'm not giving her 10K. Whatever happens, happens. I'd be like, that's stupid, but like at least that's more like there's a reason for it, versus I will sacrifice my game for the person who wouldn't even vote for me to stay. I mean, like that to me is just killer. Like that's such a stupider reason than being mad at Ava. Like that's one like his emotional imbalance on both sides. I like the idea to spite somebody. Be like, I will not give you the 10 more K. You are not going to get it. But to be honest, Ava should be $15,000 richer this week from her 5K there, and she should have got that 10K there. I mean, there's no reason. Like you said, you should think about your own game. His emotional, I think he got too close to people. I think that's his emotions, from Vinny to all his allies who weren't his allies. He felt like he was so close to them that he couldn't, betray them at all. I mean, we see in the final time of it where he could legitimately throw Vinny under the bus that last eviction speech, talk about his power, say, hey, who wins HOH gets a free $10,000. You keep me here, just put me on the block. I will use my thing. You will get this $10,000 here. There's so many ways, but he doesn't want to do that because he doesn't want to throw anyone under the bus.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you said it perfectly. Even if he didn't do it for the Ava reason, but to protect Morgan, that was at least just as bad, or as you said, even worse.
Worse.
I will say he did do a couple of things right, or at least talk about a couple of things right in this rule. Even though he was clearly madly in love with Lauren, and everyone knew, as we said in the second rule, he did keep some things separate from a game perspective. Like, he was in a closer alliance with Morgan. He told Morgan about his special power. He didn't tell Lauren. Now, of course, it could have been different if Lauren had agreed to become a showmance with him. Then things might have changed. But as things stood, even though he was, as I said earlier, swooning over her, he didn't tell her everything. And he claimed to Rob and Taryn that if Morgan and Lauren had been on the block, he would have voted to evict Lauren.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard to say with him. I mean, here's the other thing too. I think the emotional portion of this, if I remember, when he was pressing Morgan for an answer on whether she would basically keep him or not, he wanted to know that day. She's crying essentially the day, and after a while, he said, "I felt so bad about this. I told her, just do what you need to do for your game. Do what's best for you." No, that's stupid. Like, use your emotional connection to Morgan, who you sacrificed your game for. Be like, hey, I am leaving this house if you don't vote to keep me here. The reason why I'm on this block was to keep you safe. I understand you have connections with Vinny, but the reason I didn't use a super special power that's barely ever given in the game was to ensure you're safe this week. I feel like we should be able to, don't let her off the hook. Like, don't like, and that's the thing, is like, if you're going to play that game where you're going to sacrifice your game for somebody else's, then you don't let them off the hook when they won't even ally with you to keep you on for a vote. So, it's with both of them, like from Lauren, I wish he almost talked to Lauren about it. I wish he was maybe a little bit more emotional with Lauren about that, because maybe he would have been able to get through to her, and then she would have some influence around the other people around her, because then they would see, wow, like there's a difference between Zach and Vinny. Vinny is playing us. Zach wants to work with us, potentially.
Yeah, the problem is that Lauren was always more connected to Vince. I don't think he was ever convincing Lauren. But you're right, he definitely should have pushed on Morgan. You hit the nail on the head. I mean, I didn't use this to save you. The least you can do is try to save me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, another point in his favor, though, was when he was talking to Lauren about how Mickey claimed she had left her previous decision about Jimmy up to Faith. Even Zach, who, of course, is very religious himself, said it was bad gameplay to leave it to Faith. So he didn't recognize his own bad play, but he saw some of hers.
And I mean, that's the thing is, I think given some more time, he would have caught wind even more. Like he has the tools there, he can see it there. He can still is able to. I think if Morgan is out of the house, say if she is the renom and she goes, I think his game gets exponentially better from there because he is not then shackled to her in his own rules. He's able to play a freer game. And I think that's a very, very scary Zach. That he's able to use his tools and work around the house and not just with one group of people.
Yeah. All right, we can move on to the fifth rule, which says players need to pretend to be nice and play the social game. Now, overall, Zach seemed to be a very nice guy most of the time. Someone on TikTok didn't like my criticism of his decision and said, "Oh, you just obviously hate Zach." That simply isn't true. There's people out there who can't see the difference between criticizing a game move and hating a person. And I realized, calling him stupid or his decisions stupid. Yeah, that comes close. But he seems to be a nice guy in general. He's just a terrible Big Brother player. But that aside, we also mentioned his reaction to being nominated in the fourth rule when we talked about his anger. So, how do you think he did overall here?
I think everyone has raved from the season, from live feeds to this episodes of how kind Zach is, and they like his attitude and his personality. So I don't think he had to work, and he seems like a very kind person too. So I don't think he had to work hard to like pretend to be. I think that's the natural part of it. We talk
Right.
about his attributes. I think this is where he shines. I think the Ava thing, yes, I think he was frustrated about it too. Because I think from his POV, it was such a blind side where it was, hey, you said we were good, and then what happened here?
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's probably different ways. I think it was just a natural reaction. I think he caught himself post it happening where he's like, hey, like this is threw me off. I don't feel like it was something that sunk the seat. Like he didn't go full Keanu on it where of course Keanu comes and apologizes, but
Yeah.
he got to that level where I think he stayed in a reasonable amount where he felt blindsided and still upset because at the end of the day, people are going to feel that way. So I think it would be to dock him for that situation. I don't know. I think if in the fact that he felt it almost came across that he was when somebody's that hurt and upset about it, it shows like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
they care about it. Like she's like, oh, you trusted me. So I think maybe if he came in a different way at Ava, and Ava's one of the few players too, I think that type of attitude works best with her, where you come to her real, be like, hey, I'm sad. What happened here? And she's like, here's what happened. It's a game. Totally. And then boom, you're fine. Maybe if it was somebody else, it might have been the wrong move to make. Maybe if it was like a Rachel, who then he goes up to Rachel, like, why did you do this? And she would then, but yeah, I think this rule he was good in.
Yeah, regarding the way he reacted to Ava nominating him, of course, he was extremely pissy about it. He vented to people. He didn't hide his feelings very well. He wasn't happy with the reasons Ava gave and talked about how she's just always lying around in bed, which, mind you, is true. But she was still HOH and he was the nominee. So it's not a smart thing to be bringing it up. But, uh, the reason that this was especially important with Ava, as you mentioned, is that she had told her allies she would judge who she wanted out according to how the nominees reacted. Now, of course, she didn't have final say, but she had some influence with some of the players and also with Catherine when it came to whether or not to use the veto and on whom. And with all that said, Zach's reaction did not impress her.
Yeah, I mean, I think we see about Vinny which is interesting when you have players like Ava, right, who are enigma to the game and they have a different approach. Him, I think her reasoning was he took his punishment so well and everything like that. She felt better about this too. And I think it comes down to one of those things where Zach also, you forget you're in the Big Brother house. You feel like this is real life with real friends. That these are people who weren't manufactured to be there. Like I think that's the biggest, most important.
Yeah.
Each person was picked in that house to be around you. Was selected by a group of people who thought this would make a fun show. These aren't your friends at this point.
Right.
You know, they're not people who you can be like, that's post show that happens. In that house,
or doesn't, but yes,
or doesn't. Yeah, most of the time doesn't. But there are some good ones. And so I think
it's like Cliff talked about how your whole cast are friends outside the show, and I'm like, not the whole cast, probably, Cliff.
There's some people, you know, here and there, right?
Yeah, yeah.
The close friends were at the wedding.
Yes, yeah.
And but yeah, I think he didn't realize that it was you know, you get lost in a sauce where like when you're with your best friend, something happens, you can go with him, you're frustrated, you vent a little at him, you probably say this thing, you're good by the next day or so because you got off your chest. You're Big Brother house, it moves differently. So yeah, with somebody with Avis Wise, I still don't want to. I don't think this was what sunk his ship, and that's why I don't want to dock him so much on it. I think that things were already. I don't know if he reacted in such a great way, it would have changed the result.
Yeah, yeah. Now, one person who Zach did impress with his behavior was Rachel. She told him she doesn't know who to trust, but Zach is a nice guy and she just wants to play the game with nice people. Now, of course, we already know that he never actually intended to work with Rachel, but, you know, at least she wanted to help him.
I mean, he pretended, so he did well here. And I also think I want to point out the move. We talked about it before, but also to give Will that London trip too.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was a really good example of how he's able to play a social game there. And he picked the right player, knowing that Will would probably feel some form of indebted into him. And he did.
Yeah, I agree. But on the other hand, he should have just kept it. I think giving it away was, again, he was like, oh, well, I already won $10,000 and people are going to be mad. Yeah, you know how you fix that? You use the special power and you give away the $10,000. So now you've still given something away and you got to keep the London trip. So especially when he told interviewers, when they asked, what are you going to do with the $10,000? He's like, I'm going to take a trip to London with my mom. Now, he recognized the irony of it, but it's like, well, then why didn't you just do that and you could have still been in the game?
But that's the thing is, you become so short-sighted with the money, right, for him.
Yeah.
I'm so frustrated that, like, I still think the London trip giving it away was such a good move because then you now use your special power, get off the block, and now you know you can make a coalition potentially with Rachel to go against Vinny, or you can just stay on the side, let her do the work there, and you're fine there. You have an ally in Will moving forward, be like, hey, man, this is like this is us coming together, all branch. Let's work through the game. You can now build the blocks up there, and you're in he is in truly such a strong position going into this week, next week. If he just took himself off the block, and I think we see him go far. I don't think jury is the question for him. I see Zach going to that final 5, final 4 if he survives this week. If he not survive, he used that power.
Yeah. All right. Well, the 6th rule warns against being too much of a threat. And one of the things I mentioned earlier that Zach had told Dalton Ross was that he believed this was a major reason for him voted out. And I do think this is, one point where he had there was some validity to it. We talked in the 2nd rule about Mickey's feelings that he was that Zach was a danger to her alliances, which was, of course, a threat to her. She also mentioned that he was athletic and should be able to win comps, even though he'd only won the one so far. Plus, there was the issue of, like we just talked about, him being a nice guy. Several players talked about how if he was not voted out now, nobody in the house was going to put him up again. As Ava said at one point, Zach's too perfect. And I just want to say, as someone who, shares that with him, it's rough, but it's a struggle some of us just have to live with.
That is true. It's Mr. Perfect David Bloomberg right there. here's the thing: is yes, he was a threat, and I know there's comments too, but I don't know if I think if you ask most people, Vince next to Zach, who's a bigger threat to win the game? I think they would say Vinny. I think he had such a high level of people know he is in a lot of circles, hands in a lot of jars, very sociable. I think he's a huge threat, and I just don't think if that was the reason why he went home. I think Zach has a threat level, but when you compare it to, I think everyone has to say Vinny is a bigger threat, but he is my ally.
Well,
Which, to your point, is you know you're a threat against my game, so that could be
right.
it.
Right. Not only is he my ally, but if everyone else recognizes him as a threat and they're just going to put Vince up again,
Hmm.
well, if they don't think Zach is going to go up, I mean, you just said it. If
Yeah,
he had used his power, he could have sailed to the final five
you're right.
or even further
Yeah,
because people liked him. They weren't looking for reasons to put him up the same way they were looking for reasons to put Vince up. So, yeah. And then, there was one more thing that came up a few times. I put it here because I guess it's part of being a threat. I'm not sure where else it would fit in. But Kelly and Mickey and others would bring up that Zach had already won that $10,000 prize for rescuing Julie from the mastermind. They obviously didn't know it was a special power, but it was a mark against him. Like,
mhm.
we've seen this before. You already got money. You shouldn't win. He knew this was being talked about. And of course, again, one great way to take that out of discussion, use the power, get rid of the $10,000.
Yeah, it's the thing about Big Brother players, man. I don't know if it's the longevity of it, but Survivor players have it down on lock where they're like, let's give away rewards. No one wants to take a reward. They want to give it to somebody else because they know what comes with it. And this truly is one of the ways where he can pass it along there. No, you're right. I mean, there's some threat levels, whether that ended up sending him home because of all those, maybe potentially in some ways, but I do think there's other rules wise. But yeah, I mean, he's a threat in a way, but yeah, if they were able to see it, if they were able to see that he would win the game down the line, they're right.
Yeah. All right. Well, the seventh rule says to trust almost nobody. We've already talked quite a bit about him trusting Mickey while she threw him under the bus, so we don't need to repeat that. But there were others as well. Most prominently, as you have mentioned, he trusted Lauren and Morgan, both of whom voted against him. He supposedly didn't use his power to keep Morgan safe. And as you pointed out, she still didn't keep him. But as for Lauren in particular, he was so smitten with her. But she had been one of the few people playing correct, at least a few ways. In this case, by not getting into a showmance so she could focus on her game. She said that in the pregame, and she is actually stuck by it, unlike most people who say, I'm never getting in a showmance, and then they do. She felt that she had a tighter alliance with Vince. So when it came to a decision between the two, she saved the egg. And really this shouldn't be a surprise. We know how much time Vince spent with Lauren during her HOH.
Yeah, I mean, everything you said is correct. I mean, that was the basis of his game where he did trust so many people, and that's why this episode is going to be one of our longer episodes, is because of these mistakes come from him trusting so many people. There's so much to talk about because each player he had bad reads on, and people he trusted too much and didn't trust. I mean, we talk about Rachel, where she wanted to work with him. He was unable to trust her to be working with him, and then he can figure something out. He trusted Vinny wouldn't, like. Uh, I know he says it in his interviews post the game. But he's like, oh yeah, if he had to do whatever he needed to do, I respect him for it. But during the game, he didn't expect Vinny to throw him under the bus or be somebody to talk about like, hey, why should he stay there? He was
Right.
expecting him not to do that, which is insane because he's on the block. Vinny should be able to do that. And no one would, hold it against Zach to go campaign against Vinny. There's ways to campaign in the game that aren't like, oh, this guy's a horrible person. He trusted too many people, and that was truly a big downfall. I mean, he sacrificed his game on the basis of other people who
Yeah.
didn't even give him their vote.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Zach himself had some thoughts about trusting the wrong people when he talked to Mike Bloom. He said the issue with the Big Brother house is there's so much downtime in between. So you run through every single scenario. And I feel like where people tripped up is just kind of trusting too many people in that moment because you have this overconfidence that you're safe. That's really honestly the biggest thing that tripped people up. Obviously, it tripped me up this week. I would agree with that both generally and specifically for him. He trusted too many people he shouldn't have, didn't trust some he should have, and he was overconfident in both directions.
Yeah, I mean it's the thing, the antithesis of his game, of how he was able to essentially lose the game in such a strong position, was because at the end of the day, you can play the game in so many ways, but when you
Mm-hmm.
play the game for others, you will lose.
Yeah. All right, it is almost time to wrap things up, but I did want to mention something I had forgotten to mention at the top of the podcast, which is uh, yesterday, as we're recording this, yesterday was the fifth anniversary of the Why Blank Lost starting to cover Big Brother. Of course, next season in just a couple months will be the 10th anniversary of Why Blank Lost as a podcast. And then Survivor 50 will also be the 25th anniversary of Why Blank Lost as a concept. So we've got all these anniversaries here, but yes, this is the fifth anniversary. Now, it is not the fifth anniversary of you and I podcasting together, because it started with Jessica until
Yeah.
Jessica saw Enzo on in that banana challenge. It was like, nope, I cannot do this anymore. I'm not doing another season of this. But it is the fifth anniversary of covering Big Brother on this podcast. So
Well, congratulations to that, David, because this podcast, this concept would not be here without you and your incredible mind of how you put together the community you've built. And well, I'm very excited. I think a lot of our viewers are so excited for the input you give week in and week out, and also the takes of how mad you get when players are so dumb, because we need somebody to rage for us, and you are that person, Mr.
well,
Perfect David Bloomberg.
thank you. And even though you weren't there that first season, it is only your takes are definitely appreciated as well, and so helped us reach this milestone. So with that, what are your final thoughts about Zach?
I feel like a broken record, because I have really come to enjoy Zach as a person watching this game, and his natural ability to maneuver in here. I was of the mindset that he was playing close to a very perfect game early on, as he was going through things, playing that middle here, having connections there, but he was never anybody's second person or first person. He was always their third or fourth person there, and he was unable to work with other groups in the house that kind of broke the set of rules he made, where he was like, oh, I'm betraying my friends, I'm not doing this and that. He was given a superpower, essentially a huge advantage in this game, that people would literally truly throw everything away for, and he decided not to use it on himself. And more than anything, I think he is the reason why it's so tough for so many fans to watch the show, watching somebody go on the show be given essentially a get out of free jail card and just not use it and say, I want $10,000. Any person watching would say, I would literally pay $10,000 probably to be on the Big Brother show. He basically did not care about it. So that's so frustrating, because I could see him truly being such a great player. And I think for me, he will be one of the biggest what ifs. If he used his power, how far would Zach go? Would he be the winner of the season? I think there's a chance of that. But for all the reasons of not using the veto, trusting too many people, being inflexible in his game, Zach is the one and only person who set himself out of the house. And that's why he lost.
Yeah. Well, Zach said on the live feeds that his mom told him, among other things, to be like a Tucker. He succeeded. He didn't use a veto on himself, and he got himself evicted pre-jury. I don't know why any parent would say, go out there and be like the guy who lost. How about be like Dr. Will? Be like Dan Giesling? But in the end, he was, of course, compared more to being like Marcellus Reynolds. With that in mind, I decided to look back at articles I'd written and published about Marcellus at the time, over 2 decades ago. Now, many people know that this podcast began as a column on a website I used to run, Reality News Online, and I mentioned it earlier. In addition, I also had the websites, the Reality TV Hall of Shame and the Hall of Fame. Marcellus was the quickest induction, I think, ever into the Hall of Shame. Like, we had it up there within hours of his eviction. Now, I didn't write that. The author who did, C. Brian Deviney, noted Marcellus failed to consider that his position in the House was not as secure as he thought. That certainly applies to the overconfidence that Zach brought up in the interview I mentioned in Rule 7. But of course, we've spent all this time discussing various aspects of his game, and we know it goes deeper than that. Zach was nominated in large part because he had a few very open alliances. One of those overlapped with Mickey, and she wasn't happy about her people having dual loyalties. Others were similarly concerned that the little group could become too solid. Once he was on the block, other issues that had lingered in the background came to the front, like being seen as a threat. Votes gathered against him even before the veto meeting, and he had that information available, but either didn't want to recognize it or ignored it. Of course, once he was actually a nominee, his poor decision making moved to the forefront. Whether he didn't want to give Ava $10,000, as some think, or he wanted to protect Morgan, he was making decisions that were not based on helping his own game. Yes, one of his claims was that it was all about looking at the long term. But even if we accept that one, it was still bad based on how his game interacted with the others rather than on ensuring how he could move forward with them. In addition to looking at that reality TV Hall of Shame article I mentioned, I went back and looked at my Why Marcellus Lost column from Big Brother 3. In that, I, of course, discussed other issues, but in the end, I concluded Marcellus was stupid, egotistical, and delusional. I was perhaps a little blunter then. Plus, he was literally at the end of the game, which made the decision even worse than Zach's. I've used nicer words, sometimes, the same word, to say similar things here about Zach. It was a terrible move. He admitted he was overconfident, and we've seen that he had a poor read on who his allies really were. For Marcellus, a couple people had to really work on him to get him to not use his publicly known veto. For Zach, he did all the work on himself because nobody else knew about it. His lack of understanding of the game caught up to him, both in getting himself nominated and then in choosing not to save himself. And that is why Zach lost.
I always feel the need to clap after these monologues. This one specifically, man, this was 23 years in the making.
Yes.
In 2002 is when that Big Brother 3 came out. I mean, insane that it would take the 2 decades and a half to basically have the next moment, because this will be in all the compilations essentially now. Of what are the biggest mistakes a Big Brother player made. This will be one of those. Wow.
Yes. All right. Well, we will have our predictions in a moment after a few other pieces of information. And yes, it will still be a spoiler-free, even though we're recording a couple days late because the Sunday episode has not aired yet as we're recording. In addition, if you want our full thoughts, we are all over social media where we discuss Big Brother and other topics.
Yes, please do not forget, because we are active on a number of different social media platforms where we discuss Big Brother and later other reality TV shows. On Twitter, I'm at Ovi Kabir, as well as on Instagram, I'm at Ovi Kabir, and on TikTok, I'm at Basmati Boy. But David is truly all over the place. There are a few ways you can track him down as well, though. You can find him on all his various accounts of his Linktree at Linktree/David Bloomberg, or you can find him on his most text-based social media like Twitter and Blue Sky at David Bloomberg.
Not Twitter. You're using an old script.
Oh, I'm using an old script X, sorry. But on video platforms like TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram is at David Bloomberg TV. Because Threads is connected to Instagram, he is at David Bloomberg TV there as well.
Yes.
My bad. Old script.
Yes, old script. Delete that script. It refers to that other place, And you didn't mention that you're on Blue Sky now.
I am on Blue Sky as at Ovi Kabir there. I will be more, now that I'm back, I will be a lot more active on there, because you got to put it on there. So for David's sake, for no one else's, for David alone, I will be posting on Blue Sky.
Yes, I, of course, encourage everyone to move over to Blue Sky for all your Big Brother discussions. We are consistently, we have so taken over Blue Sky that, during the eviction episode and some other episodes, there's an account that tracks the trending hashtags and even the most popular words. And during one of the episodes, we had 4 of the 10 most popular words all over Blue Sky worldwide. So that's why it's so much better there. And of course, ever since Big Brother began, like you mentioned, I have been posting 3 or 4 videos per day, sometimes as many as 6 on TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram as at David Bloomberg TV. It's a combination of thoughts from the episodes, lots of live feed clips, and with Australian Survivor, Australia versus the world having started up today, I will obviously have some videos about that as well. I'm just not sure when I'm going to sleep.
You need some sleep, David,
I
because
do.
we have a lot coming up. We have a lot coming up.
So, speaking of a lot coming up, it is time for our predictions. And as I mentioned, like I put this together, what I was thinking at the time before we knew anything else on the live feeds for those of you who don't watch the live feeds. So, when the eviction was done, I, like many other people, thought the wall comp was coming due to an earlier information leak. But it quickly became obvious that wasn't going to be the case, so I adjusted my prediction accordingly. I think after winning Blockbuster, Keanu was running on a high, and I figured this may carry him through. He may be so pumped up, it carries him through the HOH comp. So given the way the past week went, I was thinking, okay, he's going to win HOH, and he's going to nominate Mickey and Morgan. And then I was debating who else, and I'll say Ashley. I think with the way Mickey was running around plotting against Rachel at the end of the week, and the way like she treated him, as I mentioned earlier, that will come back to bite her. And I think Mickey is going to get booted. And based on what we saw and the way she was acting, I also hope that's what happens.
Did you say Keanu?
Keanu HOH. Yes.
That's exactly who I was thinking would be on there too. The only difference is instead of actually being on there, I had Ava because I know he mentioned that Ava was the one who put him up beforehand. It would be not an issue if he puts her up there. So between those three going there, Mickey, Morgan, I feel like we're pretty aligned on it potentially being Mickey, but I think there might be an oddball. I'm going to throw it out there. Maybe some world people throw Ava out there because she's not super closely aligned to anyone in any shape, so she might be the one who gets the boot. Maybe people save the other side.
Interesting.
But with that being said, and our predictions as we wrap up, I want to encourage people to check out the RHAP Patreon program at robhasawebsite.com/patron. Rob has several only Patreon podcasts for Big Brother, plus other perks like the Facebook groups and Discord. You can support shows like ours and everything on the network by becoming a patron at robhasawebsite.com/patron.
And make sure you're subscribed to all of the RHAP podcasts by going to we know, well, it's right there on the bottom of the screen for those of you who are watching, we know bigbrother.com or we know realitytv.com. The We Know Reality TV encompasses more shows than just Big Brother. So it's up to you to choose what you want to get. And you can subscribe there, choose your podcast service of choice, and you'll get all of these delivered right to you.
And finally, we want to thank Scott St. Pierre and Jessica Sterling and the whole RJP and Reality TV Wrap-Ups behind the scenes team for all the work they do, editing and posting and everything else. We really appreciate everything they do to get our voice from our microphones to your ears. And thank you for everyone for tuning in. I'm so glad to be back here. I want you guys to let us know your thoughts, the comments. How are you enjoying this season? What did you think of Zach and his use of or non-use of his special powers that he had?
I think we know.
And give us some controversial takes. I want to hear it all. And then thank you, David. Congratulations for us to 5 years here in the making of why X lost, and then all the other days to come. It's so exciting. And thank you for being such a great host as always.
Well, thank you, for a great episode. Happy to have you back. Enjoyed Chappelle and Cliff, of course, but happy to have you back. A married man now, So again, congratulations to you and Hannah. And, we should be back to our usual schedule next week. It's this coming week at this point. And so we will see everyone then, or you can find us on social media in the meantime. Bye.
This is RHAP. We know reality TV.